So the Freshwater Challenge, for people who don't know, is really the sort of country commitments to restoration. And I think one of the most interesting things about the process has been listening to the countries themselves. And when we had the ministerial meeting in Dubai last year, hearing the countries say, the reason we're behind this is we're fed up with water not being in the climate negotiations. We need to do something around this because we are all getting hit by this. And I think the second interesting thing is of the 45 countries that have signed up to this already, it's a split between North and South. This is not a Southern problem issue. This is a water issue that is hitting everybody. It's a leveler. And for a sector like ours, water sector, which is so siloed, here's something that is actually uniting all countries by their reality that they're being impacted by floods and droughts and changing weather patterns in a way that they're not prepared for.
Welcome to Distilled, brought to you by KTM. I'm your host, Will Sarni, CEO of Water Foundry and founder and general partner of Water Foundry Ventures. During each episode, I'll speak with global water leaders solving wicked water problems. We'll talk about their career, their perspective on key issues facing our industry, and what's next for the world of water. Our guest today is Stuart Orr, a dear friend and one of the nicest, unreasonable people I know that gets stuff done. And his title is Freshwater Leader for WWF. Stu, wonderful to see you again.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to the conversation and thanks for agreeing to be on Distilled. I think we'll have a spirited, interesting conversation and view of everything that is going on in your world and my world and everywhere else. But Stu, I really want to start with just your background. I mean, I know your journey, but it'd be really good to sort of frame how you got to this place in your career and, what you're doing right now, what you're seeing in the world of water. Feel free to dive into the good, bad, and ugly of what's going on right now, and we can engage on that. So anyway, how did you get hooked?
Yeah, how did I get hooked? Good question. I think, it was university. I wasn't a water person. I didn't grow up next to rivers or was very aware of environmental issues most of my life, actually. But then when I was at university, I was studying development studies. I was looking at human development, thinking about my future career. And it was always about people and poverty. Those kinds of issues were always the things that drove me to school. But then I was taking natural resource classes, and I was really hooked on natural resources. I had really good lecturers. I had people like Bruce Langford and Piers Blakey and Kate Brown at University of East Anglia. And water was just fascinating. And the more I got involved in that work, and so I ended up doing a Bachelor of Science and then a Master's of Science in Environment Development with a strong focus on water resources. And that's the beginning of the end, I guess. That was it. I was hooked.
I really appreciate and value you using the word hooked. I got hooked on freshwater when I was in graduate school, and I got a job with a groundwater consulting firm, and it was addictive. I found that I was learning something every day from former U.S. Geological Survey guys that had gone into consulting. But that word hooked, I think that's still so incredibly relevant today. When you talk to young professionals and how they got interested in water and so on.
Right? Endlessly fascinating. That's the thing about
endlessly water. Fascinating. It's, you could just keep learning all the time. You mentioned that you didn't really grow up around water, but you spent part of your youth, and I won't use a New York accent for that, or Brooklyn, but in Essex, and that is Essex, Connecticut.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in London as a kid, and when I was about 11 years old, we emigrated to the U.S., to a place called Old Saybrook, which is on the mouth of the Connecticut River.
Oh, okay.
And then I ended up living in Essex for a number of years in that part of the world. New Haven, Essex was sort of where I lived for many years, doing many other different kinds of jobs and had a very different life. And so it wasn't until in my early 30s that I actually pursued a changing career, went to uni. So yeah, that first part of my life was sort of centered around the U.S. For many years.
And it's a lovely part of the country. I mean, in terms of, rivers and, estuaries and so on. So what about the journey to WWF? I mean, how was that introduced into your life, and where did you start? And then tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now. What are you seeing, again, the good, bad, and ugly in the world of water from your lens?
Yeah, so WWF was one of the first jobs I got when I graduated with my master's. I was looking for, and it was a real new change in a new career, so I didn't have much of a track record at all. But I had been doing good research. I'd published my master's thesis. I was doing some consultancy, and I was dealing with, I was working a little bit with Tony Allen, Virtual Water. And through that, it was either he or Bruce Langford, one of them met somebody from WWF at a meeting, and they were asking, do you have any good students? We've got some work we want to do on virtual water. And then my name popped up, and before you know it, I had a foothold in WWF UK. It was a 1-year research position, which I was willing to take at the time just to sort of get my career off the ground. And what I'm here, 18 years later, and I'm still in the organization. I navigated the WWF UK structure, and then I was sent over here to Switzerland, where I'm based now. And then 7 years ago, through a restructure in the organization, they put the freshwater work under a practice structure, along with forests and oceans and wildlife and other big topics. And for some unusual reason, they handed me the job, and it's been great fun. It's been tremendous fun. It's a big team. We have about 450 to 460 freshwater staff working in nearly 80 countries. And obviously, we've got scientists and practitioners, all kinds of great people working in the field, very much on the ground as well as sort of in the boardroom. So we get that real mix in WWF, and that's really exciting. But everything from hydropower planning and energy planning all the way to sort of, river dolphins and community livelihoods and fisheries. So, the organization runs the gamut of incredibly interesting projects across the world.
And from your lens, what are you seeing? I mean, what is the state of freshwater? And, yeah, I know we're going to go down this rabbit hole, but it needs to be said and declared in terms of, I would say, the tragedy that you see on a routine basis, but it does seem to propel you forward to make a change and have an impact. So, what's your view, the WWF view of, the state of freshwater and, ecosystems?
Yeah. Well, it's not good, huh? I mean, I think that's the bottom line. The state of our world's freshwater is not brilliant. And obviously, it's an organization focused on biodiversity and ecosystems. And that's the kind of thing we track. And of course, freshwater biodiversity is the most impacted biome by a significant margin. 84% down on abundance since 1970 baselines. But of course, we know that the state of the world's rivers are not brilliant. But, having said that, you could sit here and lament all the bad stuff that's going on. And, right. I am faced with it quite constantly. But at the same time, we're dealing with a resource that's getting a lot more attention. We're seeing it in the news more and more. You and I both know that climate change isn't the only water problem. There are many of them.
Right.
But it is, without a doubt, the way in which people are becoming aware of fresh water. And there's good, and that comes with good opportunities and bad consequences. But nonetheless, we're living through a time where finally, maybe, people are starting to realize that this is a resource worth protecting. And I tend to look at the opportunity side.
Yeah, I'm with you. I guess it's easy for me to say I'm an optimist, but with a footnote or two below that, profoundly troubled by everything we see, but also believe we can do better, and we are making some progress. Hey, to the point about climate change being a vehicle, platform, a narrative that people are just beginning to understand what's wrong in the world of water. Can you tell me a little bit about COP? It struck me that maybe the only good news coming out of COP was the commitment to the Freshwater Challenge, a couple of new funds popping up. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, it's worth reminding our climate colleagues that it's taken them 27 COPs to get the word water in the final documents.
Oh, Stu, now you're getting lit up. This is good.
But don't get me going on that one. So finally, we've got it in the final document. But no, I think the Freshwater Challenge, for people who don't know, is really the sort of country commitments to restoration. So it has links to the GBF Target 2 around restoration, but it also links to SDGs. Countries have been signing up to Rio Conventions on water for years and not having any measurement about progress, right? So the Freshwater Challenge is an effort by us and a number of other organizations like UNEP, IUCN, TNC, the Ramsar Convention. It's really a country-led initiative for countries to set their water targets. And I think one of the most interesting things about the process has been listening to the countries themselves. And when we had the ministerial meeting in Dubai last year, hearing the countries say, the reason we're behind this is we're fed up with water not being in the climate negotiations. We need to do something around this because we are all getting hit by this. And I think the second interesting thing is of the 45 countries that have signed up to this already, it's a split between North and South. This is not a Southern problem issue. This is a water issue that is hitting everybody. It's a leveler. And for a sector like ours, water sector, which is so siloed, here's something that is actually uniting all countries by their reality that they're being impacted by floods and droughts and changing weather patterns in a way that they're not prepared for. So in many ways, it is an extremely huge opportunity. It's building more momentum, and we're taking it forward into other fora. There's financing behind there, but again, it fits into our agenda of actually trying to get some stuff done on the ground. And that's the most important thing.
It strikes me that it's a very powerful and very real movement as opposed to pledges that are, broken with convenience, if you will. But the Freshwater Challenge, and we could double back on that one too, but it really seemed like the Freshwater Challenge has momentum and rigor and, I'll say passion behind it. So how does this unfold? At COP, I don't remember how many more countries signed up for it, but it strikes me that we'll continue to see that. So how, as a key leader with the Freshwater Challenge, you manage that process?
Yeah, well, as I said, there's a lot of organizations involved behind the scenes to make it happen and to push it further along. It's a heavy lift. Constant engagement with the countries to keep them engaged and involved is a lot of time and effort. There's a lot of questions from countries. There's a lot of work we have to do on the baselines and the measurements and the activities. And then there's a role for non-state actors as well, and we can talk about that in a second maybe. But there's an awful lot to do, but as you say, there is a passion behind it, and there is a real sense that this is needed. It's not just another pledge. This is countries saying, if we don't start to prepare ourselves now and adapt now, we are going to be in real trouble down the road. And I think that's the opportunity that we have in this. And just to be clear, we're talking about the restoration of wetlands and rivers and streams and aquifers and peatlands and mangroves. Everything fits in that definition of the Freshwater Challenge. And all of those biomes need protection and restoration to address what's coming at us. There's no doubt about
it. I'm sure you've picked up on this, but I'm seeing more companies start to embrace the theme of nature. And it remains to be seen where all of this goes, but are you seeing the same thing, that there's some traction here? And, AB InBev just put someone leading their nature initiative. I see that as a positive data point in the scheme of things. what's your take? I mean, what are you saying from the private sector in that area?
Yeah, you and I have been in the trenches of working with companies on water for 15 or 20 years. So we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, we've seen it, we're seeing now, we saw 20 years ago. So, there's a lot, that isn't moving. But the fact that biodiversity in nature has somehow become a data point and has suddenly come out of nowhere into the agenda is pretty interesting. I don't know that companies really understand what part of nature or biodiversity they need to care about or focus on. And I don't know if they've reconciled the nature agenda with the water agenda, the same way that they haven't reconciled their regenerative agriculture with water or their net zero with water. There's a lot of things coming out of companies right now that don't add up and don't fit very well. But I do agree with you that there's an opportunity with the nature agenda. And just to link it to the Freshwater Challenge, there's an opportunity there for non-state actors to play a leading role in that. So having them be part of the restoration agenda for society and for themselves seems like a pretty useful outcome.
Yeah, I agree with your take. I would say I'm optimistic that it's showing up. And I also agree that, there's quite a bit of reconciliation that has to go on between water and climate and now nature, and how does it knit together, and it doesn't become just one more silo, because to your earlier point, we're playing by silos. Last year, one of the, I think, really key things that came out was a report that you authored on the high cost of cheap water. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I've gotten a lot of mileage out of your work, by the way, in terms of, hey, pay attention. This is for real. But if you can talk a little bit about that, I think it was really just such a contribution.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a great report, and I was really proud of it. I think it took us a lot of, the value of water is something I focused a chunk of my career on and written about in the past. And we've written about the value of rivers and other ecosystems. But we felt that this report was needed because the world is starting to have that conversation about, the economics of water and the price of water and the cost of water and all of these things. So it seemed like a good moment to remind people that actually a lot of the things that we really need to be valuing are ecosystem processes. They are things that we take for granted that fuel our economies and underpin so much of what we hold dear. So it was an opportunity in the report to just make that explicitly clear. And it's had really, really good traction and feedback. I was pretty frightened to go out with the numbers we went out with. I thought, oh my goodness me, this is not going to be well received. But actually it was the opposite. People, and in many ways, to my earlier point, I also wanted to break out of the water sector. I didn't just want to be pandering to the people who really know about water. I was trying to appeal to people who don't think about this subject, So the feedback's been great. I think it continues to be a valuable report. It said some important things. And yeah, maybe it's part of the conversation going forward about things we need to focus on.
I really believe it is. I mean, to your point, yeah, we've been talking about the value of water in a very broad sense for a long time. And to put a number on it at a global scale, really should be getting a lot of attention. Feedback on your body of work, that from my perspective, has been very positive and really an eye-opener. So do you see yourself refreshing that at some point in the future again?
That report or the value of water? Yeah.
Well, the value of water, I mean, quantifying that, would you go back and, I mean, it's a significant amount of work, but would you go back in 2 years and do it again and put a fine point on it?
Yeah, I don't know that it's a baseline in that sense that we could build on it, but I think that it leads us to build off of it and to go down different directions. Right. I think that's where we'd like to go with it for sure.
And going back to the non-state actors, I know that you're very involved in, bankable projects and just getting the investment community to pay attention to the water sector, not just from a, water tech perspective, but projects and looking at funding and financing very differently. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was, that's been an incredible journey. And I mean, that really did come out of our water stewardship work. When we were working with companies and landscapes and addressing their challenges. And of course, you're looking at the landscape and saying, guys, what we need to be doing here is using your leverage and your capital to raise more money to fund projects in this basin that de-risk for everybody. That was the basis of the bankable idea for us. We then built it into a program of work within my practice, and then now we've become a consortium partner on the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development.
Okay.
And now we're looking to build other funds around Islamic finance and other vehicles to do the same thing. But my premise is that you're right. We need to think about how we can finance projects with different blended finance instruments that have a positive impact on water systems, not just a negative. It's really easy to finance a bad dam and a bad weir,
right,
and a really stupid irrigation project. Really, you can find that money really quickly. Why is it so hard to find the money? Why am I struggling to find the money to protect a wetland system that is gonna save a city downstream? So we need to think differently about how we build projects and how we link finance. And it's been a great journey, and it just continues to grow.
It's sad that it's funny, but you're right. We're good at financing bad projects.
Oh,
I mean,
easy. Yeah. And the annoying thing is the amount of information that an investor needs for a stupid project is a fraction of the questions they're asking me on
right, of course.
Doing. It's like, it's breathtaking hypocrisy a lot of the time, to be honest with you. But yes, so we've got to work with these guys to show them that actually, yes, there is a profit to be made here,
Okay, Stu, I want to run with this one.
Okay.
Because you're right. It sort of goes back to the dawn of sustainability when everyone was asking, what's the return on sustainability? Like, you got to be kidding.
Yep.
But it persists, tragically. A couple of things. One, I would be remiss if I did not ask you about your work with World Rowing. And using that as an opportunity, and you touched on this before, to talk about water with a group that sort of kind of knows water,
yep,
in a certain way, but doesn't understand the world that you live in and what you're trying to do. So if you can talk about your partnership with World Rowing and what you're doing and progress to date, that'd be helpful. And then I want to ask you about, where do you see all that's going?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as an organization as big as WWF, we have a lot of partnerships with different, corporate entities or donors and others. But occasionally we have partnerships with other NGOs or groups like World Rowing. It's a partnership that really has been, it's about 10 years old now. I think we've had this partnership. It's just there's no transaction financially. It's two organizations who are leveraging each other's brands and opportunity to bring attention to water. They've been a great partner. I've learned a lot about rowing and been to some great events over the years. It's wonderful to see the rowers with a panda on their arm and the panda at the finish line and a message around healthy waters. We're always looking at ways that we can improve the partnership. We use it to green the sport. We use it to raise awareness around water issues. We use it to sort of leverage communication opportunities. And as we go forward, we really want to start engaging rowing clubs and others to start thinking about sustainability and really to start connecting this sport more to this incredibly changing world of water and not just what it means for the sport, but the sport as an advocate for, positive action in water systems. That's really important.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I just see this as a untapped and absolutely enormous opportunity. Education, awareness, community engagement, at the watershed level and so on. So Stu, you just to kind of wrap it up, where do you see this all going? I mean, what's on track, what's off track? How are you going to spend your time going forward at WWF?
Well, sure. I guess in our humble little part of the world and the things we focus on, I'm going to focus on the positives. I see Freshwater Challenge growing. I see the interest in restoration of freshwater bodies growing. I see the interest in understanding freshwater biodiversity growing. I see the interest in wanting to protect wetlands and rivers, not just because of nature, but because they are important to societies and economies. I see a real interest in growth in financing, adaptation financing. So I'm going to take all of the positives, all of the freshwater challenge is one of them. I'm going to take them all, and I'm just going to try and run with them for the rest of my career, because I don't want to spend my time fiddling in the negative stuff. And listen, we still have our fights in our hands. We're still dealing with some really hectic situations in some river systems. We're still dealing with really stupid infrastructure projects. We're still dealing with illegal sand mining and overfishing. We're still dealing with poaching and developers just plowing over wetlands. We still have our fights, and we will continue to fight the good fight. But for me, it's about driving as many positive things forward as we possibly can.
I could not agree with you more. Well, that's a great way to wrap this up, Stu, on a positive note and a bias for action. Well, Stu, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And
thanks.
You gave me a few very memorable quotes along the way, as usual. Well, I look forward to seeing you.
You too, mate.
And thanks for everything you do.
Thank you. Cheers.